All right. Happy Wednesday night. Thank you guys for your patience. Was wrapping it up with the kiddo. Things ran over a little late. So anyway, we're here. We're live. 10:30 on the East Coast. I think it's 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So lots of stuff to get into tonight. You know, all the different things, macroeconomics, where we are. Man, just a weird time in history to be a U.S. citizen, and I'm sure people all over the world looking at things going on here. Just strange time to be alive. Good though, if you're positioned in the right way, like a lot of the people that are going to be watching this evening, and I'm sure might find this later. So on that note, again, we run it down, get into anything estate planning that you can do to mitigate taxes. We'll talk a little bit about insurance. Alfredo's asked an interesting question here that I'll run down probably first. Thank him for the super chat. Not $589, but $5.89. Interesting number. I don't normally get into the riddles or any of the stuff associated with XRP on that side. I look at everything. I take everything with a grain of salt. That number in particular is interesting for the COMEX and for multiple reasons. I'll say this. I think it would be interesting if Ripple were to have their direct listing when they go public. That's the way I anticipate things going. At $589. I think that would be a really big, I don't know, just a salute to a lot of the stuff that's gone on. So anyway, I'll run it down tonight. If you guys do have questions, put them in the chat. We will go over it end to end. And without further ado, we will get into it. So I mentioned Alfredo and his question here. Thanks again for the super chat. He says, say I procrastinate and I don't get the LLC set up before price appreciation. Can I still get one with you afterwards? Pros, cons, and also can the wife be on the LLC? So a couple different questions here, but good questions. I'm sure a lot of people are asking. So I'll kind of address the first one. Post price appreciation, depending on how much you have, you can always set up an LLC post appreciation. The capital contribution is going to transfer the basis. There's no tax implications. It transfers the time held, whatever the price of the assets are. Gifting them into the trust at that point may become a little more difficult, depending on what the price is, when price appreciation happens, what the laws look like at that time. Between you and your spouse, you get $27.22 million that you can currently gift. It's the highest it's ever been in American history. And if they don't continue that in 2025, it should drop back to like $6 million total. So big advantage right now if you're able to get that done. And if we did have price appreciation this year, I think a lot of people would go that route. Inside the LLC, if you take profit after it's transferred, so you're managing those assets, you could pay yourself a salary for managing those assets. That is one of the caveats. If you tax as an S corp, you are going to want to pay yourself a reasonable salary for whatever you're doing there. In the eyes of the U.S. government, the IRS, it's somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 a year most of the time. And then anything else that you take out of the business could be quarterly dividends or monthly dividends, however you specify that. And those wouldn't be taxed on the W-2, so you'd skip out on the 13.5% tax for your W-2 salary earnings. Or you might want to set up a C corp, depending on how much your assets really appreciated. So LLC may or may not be the best play post price appreciation. Before price appreciation, it gives you the most flexibility, really just out of any possible scenario. Even the trust, we still recommend that a lot in most circumstances that somebody sets up an LLC outside of their trust to be able to pay the taxes on behalf of the trust at a lower tax rate, and through that track paying those taxes. You don't have to sell stuff inside the trust, so it compounds at a faster rate. You're effectively transferring assets from outside the trust into the trust over your lifetime, if you do it that way. Because anything over $15,000, generated at the trust level is taxed at 37% here in the U.S., which is pretty rough. So you want some other vehicle outside of that to be generating revenue, to be able to pay the taxes on behalf of the trust at your personal income level. If you have a super high personal income, you can't mitigate those tax implications, then, we have other things that we can do. So there's a couple other pieces here I do want to mention. Let's say you have philanthropic interests, right? A lot of people that I speak with do believe in a higher power, and they want to give back, and they have some specific thing that weighs on their heart where they want to, take initiative and put something together to be able to help other people post price appreciation. Resonate with that completely. I think that's a great way to go about it. There's a lot of things you can do with a private foundation or a what's the fund called? There's a charitable fund that you can set up. It eludes me right now. But there's a couple different things you can do there. The caveat to that is you are going to have to sell and take profits in order to fund that, because it's got to be structured a specific way inside of annuities. We're working on some products that could be structured products inside of some of these other ways to mitigate taxes and set things up so that you don't have to necessarily liquidate your assets. We're not there not there yet though. So that's always interesting way that you could go about it, especially if you do plan to take significant profits. The other thing that you can do is set up private placement life insurance. And again, you're going to want to be inside of an LLC for that. So post price appreciation, you would move your assets into an LLC, and then you would set up a key employee insurance policy. Again, you're the manager of that business. And so, if you pass away or something happens to you, there was definitely a detriment to the ability of that LLC to be able to earn and do things with the assets. And so therefore you can take out a pretty large policy. You can do a max funded IUL or PPLI or variable life, whole life. There's a bunch of different products that you might look at for those. And again, Digital Wealth Partners, we can work with you on all those things. It's going to be a person-to-person basis based on your constraints and your long-term vision and risk tolerance, a bunch of stuff. We'll figure out and craft a product specific for you. And then you can mitigate taxes that way. You can fund some of those policies in kind and then take the write-off, and you never had to sell against whatever income you did have or take. So insurance is a big play for us, and it's something that we're focusing on. The cons to not doing it now: you're not going to have a bank account set up to take profit. You're not going to have an exchange account set up to take profit if that's something you want to do imminently upon price appreciation. If you're doing that in your personal name, you're going to be saddled with those tax implications. You get a standard deduction and not a whole lot more if you don't have it in LLC before you're taking that profit. And if you're pulling that profit to a personal account that hasn't ever had more than 7 figures in it or high 6 figures, there's a large possibility that that's going to get frozen. So there's a lot of things that you can do to be proactive, setting up a business account with institutions or with exchanges for the LLC that you set up prior to price appreciation, just so that you're in place to be able to actually actualize that profit if you're going to take it. It acts as a better credit chassis also. So if you do want to be able to borrow against the assets, the LLC provides a benefit there. The longer the term that you had it open, the more seasoned these things are. Trusts also take time to season for the asset protection. It takes about 2 years before you really have the full amount of asset protection that you're going to get from an asset protection trust in Wyoming. You get the probate thing almost immediately, but the asset protection takes a little bit longer. And then again, for credit worthiness and The benefit there to be able to work with institutions or other providers. We have relationships, obviously, that we can provide clients and work with them on. But if you wanted to go independent of us to do things, the longer an entity has existed, the better off you're going to be in those circumstances. Which seems silly, right? Like, it's the same amount of assets I had before. Why? But there's a difference. Like same thing, they look at your credit report. The longer you've had credit matters, right? So if you're adding your kids on your credit cards when they're young or 12 years old, whatever the specification is for the credit card that you're dealing with, and they've been on that line of credit and you've been responsible with your credit, it helps them out a lot, because now by the time they're 18, they have a full credit history of multiple years, maybe almost a decade, maybe more than a decade by the time they're 18. And that gives you a huge advantage when it comes to credit. So I'm trying to think if there's anything I skipped over here that's good to include. Being proactive is always good, right? We've talked about this frequently and actually here lately in the Discord community and the mastermind. If you have things set up and you've been proactive, you can remain calm, cool, and collected when all this stuff happens. You're not going to get emotional and make poor choices. People always think of being emotional as kind of like a down, like my portfolio's down, capitulate, sell at the bottom. There's a lot of people that make poor choices when they're in euphoria also. So if you've got systems and processes in place, you've got your assets held with this, you've already got your bank account set up, you know how much profit you're going to take, you've thought through when and where to take that, you have a certain portion of your assets held on an exchange in the LLC's account there, or you hold it in qualified custody with us and we're able to execute transactions with you. You're just going to be able to remain very calm, cool, collected. And I don't know if you've ever sent 6 or 7 figures from one exchange to another, or one wallet to an exchange, or back off the exchange to your wallet. It's not for the faint of heart. Here, send like a couple transactions to make sure that it's going to go through and it's good, and then you hit the big one and you kind of hold your breath a little bit till it lands over there. So anyway, yeah, this is a great question and something I've been asked a couple times, but I don't think I've ever really run down in depth like all the different considerations around this and why you may want to go ahead and do it now versus later. I have biases, right? So take it with a grain of salt. I would prefer to be set up beforehand, but there will be people that wait, and that's okay, right? It's not the end of the world. You are just going to be a little bit behind. And if you're not taking profit immediately, if you don't have a plan to do that, if you're okay with waiting 2, 3, 5, 6 weeks to get things set up, structured in place, then you're fine. And if you don't plan to take profit, you plan to just borrow against it in perpetuity, you have a good job that you're not going to leave until you've set up income for yourself that allows you to do that from passive sources, and you're a little more methodical about how you're going to do this. The other thing I would say is, if you have more than $500,000 invested, trust would be I would highly recommend doing that now, just because it's likely that you are going to be over the gift tax threshold. And if you gift a portion post, that's going to be difficult to get all of that in there. And then you're going to be hit with the estate tax or the gift tax above that threshold. If you do want to move more, again, we can set up insurance on the LLC and do other things, but you're very limited in options and scope if you don't have the assets at least in an LLC. So, yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Thank you for this one, and thank you for the super chat. Big G says, do you have any thoughts on XRP Healthcare? Also, you say it's good to have multiple wallets. Do you recommend splitting your XRP across wallets in a certain way? Appreciate your educational info. This is something I've discussed, but it's been a long time, Big G, so it's a good time to go over it again. Thoughts in healthcare. I think there'll be other networks that are better suited for healthcare, Hedera Hashgraph, maybe even XDC, maybe Cardano. Like there's a few other networks that come to mind when I think of healthcare. The way that information has to be held and stored, and to be able to share that data between institutions or with your ID on that network, wherever it ends up being, I think will revolutionize that industry. I think that billing in healthcare and insurance will be completely changed. That in that situation, the insurance and the billing, I think that maybe Hyperledger might provide some value there. But it definitely could be XRP if these are high payments, high value payments, moving between hospitals and healthcare centers and insurance. I think XRP will probably play a role there. So I think that healthcare in particular probably ends up with, I don't know, somewhere between 4 and 7 different networks that are involved with that. Between the storage of the data, the sharing of the data, the securing of the data, those pieces, smart contracts between different institutions, or not institutions, but healthcare providers, IMO, the insurance. Like there's a lot going on there. So we actually went up and talked to Arcare in Arkansas. Max and I, my business partner in Arkansas, sit on the blockchain council for Arkansas, and we're able to go up there and provide some insights to them around that exact conversation. So anyway, that's on the healthcare. The next question you asked was a bit separate. So before I moved my assets into institutional custody, I had 12 wallets. Probably overboard, a little overkill, a lot of seed phrases. My wife definitely wouldn't have been able to figure all that out. God forbid something had happened to me. What I will say about that is I like to have one central address that I use as like a checking account that I interact with exchanges with, and then I would move the money or the assets that were sent to that wallet then to whatever cold wallet I wanted to deposit them in. And I would leave them there so that those would be hopefully quantum resistant. Like that's probably a ways off, David Schwartz says. And I think institutional custody will likely take over the market by time that's actually a thing, and they have a lot of different ways to be able to mitigate potential loss or hacking by quantum at that point. So, but in the short term here, yeah, I do recommend splitting your assets at least across some different wallets. I don't know that you need 12. I didn't want to put more than a couple $100,000 in one wallet, just to mitigate the risk of loss. Right. The checking account wallet is where I would set up trust lines or anything else that I was going to do that was maybe riskier, and maybe you have a wallet specific for that that's set to the side of even the checking account wallet that you deal with. So one of the things that I worked with business owners on when I was doing the M&A and the consulting was setting up a profit first system. And in that you have an account that all the money flows into for the business. Below that, you would have an expense account where you would move, 30 to 50% of that money. A portion of that would sit here. But before you would do anything, you would send 10% to a profit account. And then you would also take, 20 or 25% to taxes. And those would sit in a money market, ideally at another bank that was where it was difficult for you to even get to. And then the 3 accounts, you'd have 2 other accounts below that expense account, or not the expense account, but the account that sat in the middle. So you'd have expenses for the business, and then you'd have like a treasury or investment account separate of that you would invest in for the business as well. So that way you always have profit and you always have taxes. And people say, I can't do that. I need all the money that we have. I guarantee you've worked off less and been able to figure it out. So, anyway, different topic, different conversation, but it kind of alludes to the structure in my mind for how this works. I like having other accounts connected to one central account that is the intermediary or interface between exchanges and what you do for your personal stuff or your business. So hopefully that provides you some insight or value. And again, the institutional custody, don't have to worry about doing all those things. It's nice just to have it in one spot. Crypto Future says, in the event of the financial reset where banks and ATMs freeze deposits, would crypto exchanges freeze our assets also? We've already seen banks go down. That has happened. FDIC doesn't have the insurance to cover the amount of risk that's in the system currently. Could there be a scenario where banks freeze deposits and ATMs? Absolutely. I think that they'll coordinate it where it's over a weekend, so it doesn't have as high of an impact if something like this does occur. On the exchanges, though, this is a good question. And I would say it depends on who you're working with. So again, if your assets are held in a siloed, sectioned off, custodian, don't have to worry about that. You can move them wherever you want. The exchanges, however, do owe that to you, right? So they send your money into an omnibus account and they'll give you a tag. So think of their wallet address as the routing number for their bank or exchange, and then the tag number that they give you for your XRP or XLM kind of as an accounting number or a way for them to manage what they owe you out of that account. And they do owe it back to you. It's not yours if it's on an exchange. So if we had a situation with Tether where it became illiquid or frozen, sanctioned, which I do think is likely, I think that exchanges will scramble for liquidity. I don't know that they would freeze assets, but it's quite possible that they halt withdrawals for a period of time to be able to stabilize themselves. Is that right? Is that wrong? Look, I always try to put myself in the other person's shoes. If there's a run on the bank and they don't have it all because they use, fractional reserve banking, FTX had higher reserves than any bank does. Just so you guys know, like when that happened, Binance, FTX, Voyager, Celsius, all of these institutions had more collateral than banks do. All day, every day. Can they get credit lines from other people to be able to fulfill if people are withdrawing at a high rate? That's where it becomes a little dicey. They don't have like a lender of last resort for crypto. So that's why they have to freeze things. But they're trying to protect themselves and protect the other clients, because if they go under and they are insolvent, then you have another Voyager or Celsius situation where it's years before anybody gets anything back, and you get it back in cash, not in kind. I've got a gentleman I spoke with not too long ago that was on Voyager, I believe it was, and he took his assets out like a month before everything actually went down. And they're using a clawback. So if you took money off the platform within 60 days of them going down, they're asking you to send it back to them at the current price. And then they're only going to give you cash value or less than cash value, a percentage of what the assets were worth on their platform when they went under. Now, I'm not sending you guys, that much Bitcoin right now. So that you can give me less than what you owed me in cash. Get out of here. So anyway, you don't want to be in one of those situations. I would just say be smart about it. Hold your assets. Not your keys, not your crypto is the truth at the end of the day. In institutional custody, all of our clients sign on their wallets. They still own all their crypto. They have the capability to view them. We're just it's a multi-sig wallet. We provide the secondary signatory on those, or the tertiary signatory if it's a trust account. And we do provide, financial planning and also the advisory and wealth management if clients want that as well. So anyway, I know it was long-winded, but yeah, it's quite possible that all of that scenario could play out, especially with Tether if it were to be sanctioned. And I think that would have knock-on effects where it could possibly cause damages to the entire financial system and even the stock market. So I have to see. KT Girl, she says, thanks. Her thoughts on blockchain backers' thesis this morning that the next will be over in the next 60 days. I think he's spot on. BCB, I've never seen him. But he also doesn't call it one way or another either. He gives you possible outcomes, which I appreciate. The smartest people that I know always say it depends. And then they allow you, they work out the constraints and explain themselves for each scenario that could happen. And he always does that very well. He articulates that to people, qualifies things, and says, if these constraints remain true, then this would be the outcome. If these constraints change and this is what I'm looking at, then it could be this way, right? And then, when constraints go a certain way, he tends to be on target. I think he's spot on. I want him to be spot on because we have an event on the 19th of September, which he called as, potentially the top. Be cool if we could get a lot of excitement going for that event. So yeah, I definitely think the next 60 days are going to be extremely volatile in a very good way for people that are invested in crypto. Her second follow-up here says, feeling less and less likely that we're going to see any institutional adoption in the next 12 months. Thoughts? I feel the exact opposite way. I feel like there's a very almost 100%. Well, I don't ever want to say 100% or absolute. A very a 99.999% likelihood that we do see institutional adoption in 2024 to some capacity, definitely in 2025 by this point next year. Stablecoin regulations, FIT 21, change in administration and who's in office. All of those things are going to happen in the next 12 months, and I think you're going to see what was Chris Larson. He says Cambrian explosion is what I think we're going to see in crypto adoption and actual utility over the next 12 months here. So hopefully that gives you a little more pep in your step. You seem a little down in this, comment here. I think the opposite. Having conversations on a daily basis that make me feel very optimistic for institutional adoption. Daniel Smith says, greetings from China. Cool, man. I've had maybe one or two other people on here from China. Very cool. If one decides to buy, borrow, die, the money would have to flow through the LLC or trust, right? Can it pass through untaxed? And if so, how? Many things. Insurance. So other jurisdictions don't mix financial products with their insurance. Up until starting to deal with high net worth individuals and family offices and other affluent people that work with affluent people, professionals, in estate planning and taxes and wealth management, I thought you should separate your insurance from your investments. But if you're able to max fund policies with cash and have high cash values and pull lines of credit against them, there was a video I posted in the mastermind group the other day that was about the Rockefellers and how they had really they basically insure their wealth. And the way that they do that is they'll open an insurance policy on everybody that is within the family. and they'll max fund it. They'll have a cash value, that the family can draw against, not the individual. And they'll insure it up to however much money that individual takes out of the family bank. So if that individual borrows against the family life insurance policy from their family office or their family bank, or if they take money out for whatever reason, they make sure that the insurance policy on that individual matches or exceeds what they took out or what they borrowed. And in doing so, they're basically covering any losses that could happen, right? So you got to pay the premiums and make sure that the policies stay up, and there's a bunch of things that go into that, but that's exactly how you would do that with no tax implications, because you're always borrowing. Debt is not income and therefore not taxable. So the assets continue to grow inside the family bank. You fund, you pay for a key employee of the business or family bank or corporation to have a life insurance policy on them that matches, whatever money they've taken out or exceeds that. And so when they pass away, that cash value in that policy pays off any debt that they owed on the line of credit that they drew against the family stuff or cashed out, plus extra that goes back into the family bank. Really creative, very intelligent way to do things. Quite costly, but that's what insurance is, right? You're paying a premium to make sure that you don't have loss. So you can definitely do that with different structures. You'd make the trust or the family bank, the asset protection trust, the beneficiary of those policies, and the LLC that they have would be what would issue the policy that would pay that off for them. So definitely something where we work with clients on. We have a lot of different providers that we work with and very creative ways to do that. Met with a guy the other day that has a very interesting way of doing PPLI that I hadn't heard of before. A lot of edgy stuff that exists out there, and when you're playing with a lot of money, I don't want to say you can get away with it, but you can get away with it. So that's kind of the concept there for the buy, borrow, die. On a lower level, as long as your assets appreciate at a higher interest rate or greater return than what you're borrowing, then you can continue to borrow more debt against the same assets to pay off the previous loans over your lifetime. And then again, when you pass away, the assets themselves as the collateral do pay off whatever is owed, and whatever's left passes to your kin or your beneficiaries. So anyway, our estate planners are extremely proficient with all this stuff. That's just a high level. There's a lot more intricacies to setting things up that way, but that's kind of the cyclical nature of how that actually works in practice. Greg Q says, Jake, you talk about staking XRP. I don't ever say staking, but I understand where you're going. Once things are set up and we can't lose it, what percentage of your bag would you recommend staking? Not financial advice. Again, the XRP will never be staking. You're not ever putting that with a validator or providing. I mean, you could be providing liquidity in a pool, and you might refer to that as staking in a pool. I don't think it'll be referred to as that, though. You'll be delegating your liquidity. That's the wording I prefer. I think staking is going to actually end up being a security in the eyes of the SEC. I could be wrong, just my 2 cents. So I would say delegating XRP. And what percentage would you recommend doing? It's very dependent on the individual we're working with and their financial goals. Do you plan to borrow against a portion of it and then use the other portion of it to be able to generate interest to cover the payments and the interest on what's been borrowed? Why are you staking it? Is it just for the income? It's not staking again. Why are you earning yield on the XRP? Is it just for the income? How are you mitigating taxes on that income? I prefer the first strategy that I just mentioned, which is where you borrow against a portion and then use the rest of it to produce the income to be able to pay off the note, because now you've borrowed that money. It's not income, and the income that you are making services the debt, which actually gets written off. So you don't have to worry about it. Paying taxes on it, because you're paying off the debt that you took out and whatever interest is owed. So anyway, it's one way of doing it. Everybody has a different lifestyle, position, long-term goals, all that. So it's very difficult for me to give you any specific percentage here. If you wanted to talk with and I know I sound like a lawyer, right? It depends. Yep. But honestly, it does. I can't, if I gave you any type of specific ratio just arbitrarily without understanding the larger constraints of what your situation is, it wouldn't be useful. So, but like I said, I can kind of give you the model of how we think through things and how you might orchestrate it. Atlantic Living, appreciate you. You always have good questions, and you're always here. Thank you for showing up so consistently. Say, hey Jake, concerned with BB's remarks regarding limited bull run. BB, I'm assuming that's blockchain backer. Did you get an opportunity to listen to his technical analysis? I'm not concerned with the limited bull run. This is normal. Everything pops off in like a 2-month window. I've been through a couple of these. So, and that's exactly like it was. It's super exciting. It's euphoric for a very short period of time, and then it's over. And if you take profit, then great. I think that this one is going to be different. I think if there's enough liquidity in XRP and the circumstances play out like I've illustrated in the domino theory, I think that it'll end up being a high price and it'll be stable, especially if we do get stablecoin regulation passed and it's designated a bridge currency here in the US and we see adoption. XLM probably may fall into the same boat. I don't know if as much liquidity will move into that token. I haven't seen an ETF or fake ETF filed for XLM. And this is the reason on that. So, and again, I'd say it, but we talked about this in the mastermind group not too long ago. When the ETF news broke about BlackRock filing that, the iShares Trust for XRP, and they called it a fake, right? And kind of swept it under the rug. And they're like, oh, the DOJ is investigating, which nothing ever came of that. Nothing ever happened. I think all that stuff's still there, just sitting in the background waiting to be used. XRP broke out completely independent of anything else, which it's never done. It's always run corollary with XLM and, through these cycles. But for it to move as drastically as it did on that news in particular, I think we're going to see that again. Ethereum today had another $1 billion inflow or flows, $1 billion worth of flows for the second day in a row. Bitcoin's billions of dollars a day in flows. If XRP got billions of dollars a day in flows, the exchanges and the OTC desks don't have enough to cover that. I don't think there's currently $1 billion, like $1 billion worth of liquid XRP on exchanges for people to buy. Even at the current price, at 63 cents, 64 cents, whatever it's at right now. I don't think there's enough out there on exchanges and OTC desks that would even cover a $1 billion inflow into XRP. So I think that we'll get a substantial jump if we do get an ETF announcement. If BlackRock uses that infrastructure that was supposedly faked, and they file an S1, right after we have a settlement for the case, I think that you could see some crazy price action on XRP. So no, I know I trailed off there on a completely different tangent. But yeah, I'm definitely not concerned about the limited bull run. I'm super excited. If we get the same type of move that XRP had and some of the other altcoins had back in 2017, 18, 1000x return in 50 days. I'm game for that. Absolutely. So, yeah, I hope you guys are ready. Hope you got your LLC and you're in position. Jerry says, "Hey Jake, I had a consult with Mikkel. Awesome, brother. He said, got my LLC through Jonathan. Fantastic. And would like to know the timeline for getting cryptos to you guys. So it seems to me that both Anchorage and Archax are full steam ahead. I'm hoping that we go through the full onboarding process to have our accounts set up and ready to rock by the end of this week. Hoping and doing are two different things. And I had to kind of set some expectations with my team the other day too, because I was the only one around when we set. I said the only one around. We had a limited team when I set things up with standard custody. It took 6 weeks. It took 6 or 8 weeks for me to get set up with standard custody and actually, get through and have our account set up and get the processes in place to start onboarding people and moving along with that. And once we have a system, then it becomes much easier, right? You get used to working with people. You know what you're supposed to do. If there's videos and setting things up and emails structured for the accounts, and you got to get a rhythm for that, and you have to build out SOPs, and then you got to execute on those, and then people get comfortable with them, and then it becomes much faster. It snowballs. So my expectation is early August here, still kind of in alignment with what I originally stated. Maybe into mid-August. Our priority in the short term is getting clients migrated from standard custody over to Archax. But we should have the Anchorage account open to begin onboarding other people as well within the next 7 business days, I would say. So that's kind of the timeline. If you want to go ahead and get ahead of the pack, we do have, I think we got like 25 or 30 people in the backlog for custody right now that are ready to go. And we'll be doing webinars in the beginning just so that everybody can hop on there, see the platform, look through everything, ask questions, understand what's going on. It won't be an open forum. We'll have a webinar that's a demo of the platforms for people that are wanting to participate in either one. And again, that helps us too, because all the questions that are asked in those at the end, we will create FAQs for every future onboarding client, and we'll have the recording of the webinars that we'll be able to play people. So appreciate you being patient. Appreciate people working with us. I think I talked about this on Monday too. It may have been, I don't know if it was here or not though. It's a double-edged sword being on the bleeding edge of a lot of this stuff and setting things up. It's awesome. I love creating. I love getting to work with a lot of the, what I consider some of the highest level institutions and professionals in digital assets. The downside or the cons are we're first to market on a lot of this stuff. And so the integrations, the features, the UI, a lot of things just don't exist yet because it hasn't been a huge need or market. And so therefore it wasn't built until there's enough revenue to be able to justify things for business. People, I'll jump, I'll figure it out, and I'll spend some money up front to be able to get things to market before an adoption curve happens, which is a lot of what we've done. But larger businesses, especially the larger you get, the less risky you're willing to be. And building out integrations between partners that don't have mutual clients, you don't have a reason to do it. So we're becoming that conduit, which is really cool. I never thought that Digital Ascension Group would end up kind of like the piece that people use to justify partnerships and connecting things and building specific products and services. But that's really kind of what we've turned into. So back to your question here. Next 2 weeks, we should be able to onboard you into Anchorage specifically, and then Archax may take just a little bit longer. AJ Trade says, "Hey Jake, what are your thoughts on potential Japan rate hikes and cutting back bond buys? Still in line with the domino theory?" On point, man. We're seeing the yen appreciate against the US dollar at a pretty good clip over the last week here. Where are we at now? It was pushing down earlier today when I was looking. Yeah, still dropping. When I say dropping, I mean appreciating against the US dollar. So big drop off in the last 2 weeks here from around 161, 162 yen per US dollar, all the way down to 152 yen to US dollars right now. Like a 3% drop or appreciation in the yen against the US dollar. I think once we get below 150, especially 150, 140, you're going to see a lot of people dumping US treasuries very quickly and paying back loans that they have on the reverse carry trade. There's going to be problems for people if they don't. People are going to be defaulting. A lot of people are leveraged to the hilt on that deal because they didn't think it was ever going to be possible for the yen to appreciate against the US dollar. And if they roll out a CBDC and they back their treasury with commodities and they incentivize people to hold their own and they do hike rates, man, the Nikkei is going to explode. People there are going to love that. And their economy is going to do well, and they're going to de-risk from the US dollar. And that's basically death for the US dollar as we know it. I don't think in total, like, the US dollar is not going to go anywhere, but the fiat debt-based system that a lot of us, moved into crypto to get away from will go away. And I think a lot of this technology will actually be used in the new financial system that's rolled out to help with, immutability, transparency, trust between counterparties, which is good, but it is going to still be in centralized sources. I know everybody wants everything to just be this esoteric DeFi, beautiful, no regulation, Wild West thing, and it still kind of is right now in the US. We got people speculating on meme coins and rugging people and get away with a lot of stuff right now. But that's not good for long-term maturity or the benefit of an entire ecosystem or technology. And so I think Japan is the initial domino. I still think that oil has something to do with it. Still watching yen in WTI crude. I think if we see a spike in the cost of oil in Japan, that's really going to be the biggest catalyst for them to dump. So I don't know if that's going to be the Middle East cutting them off, or Jim Rickard talked about a conflict in the Middle East and the shut off of the Strait of Gibraltar, and like 1/3 of the world's oil supply moves through that strait. And so if it was shut off for whatever reason, we've got this stuff going on between Israel and the other party over there right now. So if that were to escalate and they shut off that strait, I think that things would move very fast after that. J-Tank 20. Yeah, I would agree with this. XRP. I don't know that I like the wording here, but I would agree with the outcome. XRP is taking over Swift. So Swift isn't going anywhere. Swift will continue to operate. It moves the majority of the value in international trade right now. Chips is eating into that a little bit. Chaps was down the other day there in the UK and the EU. I think that XRP could be used to settle those transactions, but as far as taking over that entire infrastructure in that market, I don't think it will displace Swift. I think Swift will use XRP or partner with RippleNet or R3 to be able to settle those transactions real time. And to your point, if they even just got 10% of that, that's $100 XRP. So, like I said, I agree with the outcome. Marsha, she's asked a good question here, and I can't give you a public answer on this, but I will do the best I can for you. So can members of the mastermind group buy pre-IPO Ripple shares through me? We run private deals in the group. I signed one today at a very good price that's 40% less than some of the competitors for the same type of shares that you may or may not be mentioning in this question. And we've run previous Ripple deals that were private deals in the community and have given people access at significant discounts in comparison to competitors. So yes, it's quite a possibility that the question that you've asked here may or may not be true right now or in the future. And you might be like, why is he fumbling? Why is he saying it this way? We run 506B Reg D offerings in the mastermind group. There's two qualifications that we have to have with individuals for them to participate in those deals. One of those is we have to have a pre-existing business relationship. So the passing of consideration between one party and another for a service is a business relationship. We also have to make sure that those individuals qualify as sophisticated. The way that we do that is we provide educational, financial education and business resources through the website, and they're in the group. And we feel that qualifies people as sophisticated enough that they have an understanding of this specific asset class and the types of deals that we run there to allow them to participate. 506C, you can market publicly. I could come on here and say, hey guys, come jump in this deal with me. But you would have to be accredited. So, and that's the other benefit of 506B is we can involve up to 35 non-accredited investors with us on the cap tables in these deals that we do. So I'm a big proponent of providing equal opportunity to people that want it, that may not have the means right now to be able to participate in things. And so this is the way that we've been able to orchestrate that for people, which has been really fulfilling and really cool. So would love to tell you more about what you've mentioned here specifically in the group there, Marcia, in Carbon 1. Black 50 was asked a question. This is good. He said, should a iTrust Capital Roth IRA be added to my LLC? You can make the LLC the beneficiary of that retirement account. Again, I hate saying it depends, but it does. I don't know how close you are to retirement. If you're within 5 years, maybe not. If you want to make it's a Roth IRA, right? So you're not going to be charged tax on the back end when it comes out anyway. So that coming into your personal name, great. You don't have to pay taxes on it because of the way you structured it on the front side. You paid the taxes on whatever it was before you put it in there. So if you're close to retirement, really just add all. If it's a Roth IRA at iTrust and it's digital assets, you're going to have to hold it till 59.5 anyway. You're not going to be able to leverage it. If you move it over to us, we can work with you to be able to earn a yield on it. And then the yield can be put into a side account, and then that operates under some different rules than the initial investment. I don't really see a benefit of moving that into your LLC if it's a Roth. There could be circumstance where it is that I'm not thinking of, but just offhand, in your personal name is probably fine for the Roth IRA, especially again if you're closer to retirement. Oh geez, I jumped down to the bottom here. Let's go back up and get some more of these good questions that you guys have. Man, there's a lot of stuff here. Let's see. Utility Maxima says all YouTubes all a buzz about XRP going to 150 by year's end. Is that possible? Oh, YouTube's all a buzz. Okay. I mean, we could see more than that if it all depends on the constraints, though, right? So you need actual adoption and utility of the network and settlement of large payment flows and transactions for specific networks that already have those payment flows. And you need enough liquidity in XRP to be able to settle that for those to actually take place. So I think that there's an absolute possibility that that could happen by the end of this year. I think that it could be higher than the price that you mentioned here by the end of this year if certain things were to play out in that time frame. If they don't, then no. If this bull run is a speculative bull run and there's no utility here, I don't think XRP gets over $2, which is sad to say. But if we get actual utility, absolutely, I think 150 is completely reasonable, and like I said, potentially more. Mr. Jace, he says, "Hey Jake, can you give insight on XRP Rich List and on CoinCarp website? It says that the top 10% XRP wallets held 33% of the XRP, and now the top 100 wallets hold 73% of all the XRP." Yeah, I could see that. Some people would view that as a bad thing. The institutions, the banks, the enterprises, those are the people that run the world, okay? I don't make the rules. I just play by them. Hopefully one day, I get to a point where I have a seat at the table and I can have some influence on some of these rules and make them a little bit fairer for people. But the world's not fair. Life's not fair. And I would say that that's probably very accurate. The figures that you've mentioned here, the top 100 wallets likely do hold 73% of all the XRP that exists. And those wallets would be held by the people that need to be holding it, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with stacking my pennies next to their dollars. And, like what did David Schwartz, he said, if a few people get extremely rich because of this, it's not that big a deal. Tino Sandoval. Sandoval? Anyway, probably butchered that, but appreciate you being here. I'm sure with the influx of new clients after price appreciation, the time frame getting things done and set up will vary. What kind of time frame do you think we'll be looking at post liquidity event? I'm doing my best to scale a team and make sure that we have people that have been through processes and we've got systems and things in order to be able to accommodate a large influx of people all at the same time. I will say this: people in the mastermind, people that have set up calls and been proactive, people that have LLCs, people that have worked with us beforehand will take precedent. So that's already about 700 people in total between all the clients we currently have, people that have worked with us to do some estate planning, people in the mastermind, those individuals that have been proactive. I'm very big on loyalty. I'm very big on taking care of people that take care of me and on our company. And so the people, you're here on this chat, so hopefully you're in the mastermind group or, have reached out and had a consult. But all of those people will get a follow-up email immediately upon price appreciation. And we'll get this exclusive opportunity to work with us first before any of the influx that we do see. Not to say that we won't work with any of the influx, because we absolutely want to. But those people, I'm not going to say we'll take second priority, but kind of will take second priority over the people that have already been with us for a long time, or are with us, even just right before price appreciation takes place. Like I said, big on taking care of people that take care of me, and our people, and we have our tribe, and loyalty is important. So anyway, time frame wise, I think that we could probably get through with our current team, systems, and scale, the existing amount of people that we have in the pipeline to work with. in a month, maybe. And then we would start to work with people that, came in. We'll have contact. It's not like you're just going to get ignored for sure. But it would be kind of a waiting list, and you'd be scheduling right on calendars with our advisors, and you would be able to pick their earliest availability after we have the people in the groups with the capability to schedule first. So we'll probably lock it down on the website for like a day or two. And then make sure that everybody else is taken care of and booked up and onboarding, and then we would open it back up to the public, maybe 2 or 3 days after price appreciation takes place. So anyway, and again, I don't know, people may think that that's stupid, that I'm missing out, I'm turning people away. That's not my intention. I just have made it a priority to always prioritize people that have made me a priority, and being proactive a priority. So hopefully that gives you a little bit better idea of time frame to work with us post price appreciation if you don't already have a relationship. Gary Gonzalez says, "Hey Jake, love what you do. Thank you, brother. Just saw an article on Japan getting ready to have a fire sale on 400 billion US debt. Wondering what happens after. The dominoes start falling, Gary." I put out 2 videos here on the YouTube channel if you want to go check them out. First domino video I put out for XRP was back in March this year, so 5 months ago almost. And I talked about the catalyst of things kind of transpiring. The first being Japan, which would have knock-on effects for Tether, which would have knock-on effects for the US dollar, which would then have ripple effects for, so it'd be yen, US dollar, Tether, Bitcoin, and then markets as a whole. And it will move very quickly through that progression. And the end result would be, implementing XRP at scale, and driving liquidity into that would stabilize a lot of things, including the back end of the stock market, which would need to be able to settle real time so that the institutions don't have unrealized losses at scale for the spot Bitcoin ETF and Ethereum ETFs that they now have, when there are huge outflows and losses in crypto because Tether became illiquid and people pulled their money. So we'll see. But yeah, this sounds horrible. I'm not excited for Japan to dump our US treasuries, but I kind of am because I know the outcome. And it doesn't end up poorly for us either. I just want to say that, we have the capability to shore up the treasury market, and we have the capability to make sure that everything's situated on our side of the fence. But there is going to be some volatility and problems for a short period of time. But most people have happening or is going to go on. There's going to be people around you that are freaking out while that's going on, and people that are watching this and are prepared are just going to sit back and smile. I'll just go outside and drink some coffee on my porch and just be happy. So appreciate you guys becoming members of the channel. By the way, there were a few of you that just did that, so it's much appreciated. Let's see here. Will says, very much appreciate the effort you and everyone else puts into the community. I think you know your answer, but thoughts on selling some XRP to fund a purchase of Ripple stock? Again, I can't talk about deals that are currently going on here in a public forum, Will. However, I will answer your question. So ROI for me, if I look at it objectively and I remove emotion from it, I think XRP has a higher ROI than Ripple shares, and I think that price appreciation on XRP would happen previous to Ripple IPO, because that's going to give them a higher valuation. And I just said Ripple IPO. I said the other night that I don't think it'll be an IPO, and people lost their minds. When I say that, I mean direct listing. So when they go public, I think that they'll go public through an acquisition or a direct listing, which is not technically an IPO or initial public offering, but I digress. It's my thesis that XRP appreciates prior to that happening. Now, would that cause Ripple shares on the secondary market to skyrocket? Absolutely. Will there be ROI there still? Likely. Yeah. Even if Ripple shares on the secondary market went to more than what they've sold it or bought it back for on the tender offer, even at the tender offer price, I still think there's a lot of meat on the bone there. Again, I'm hoping for a 589 listing. I could be wrong. It could be less than that, but Ripple has bought a lot of shares back at $61.48. So, they just bought back another $280 million worth at that price. They wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't an IPO at a 10x, close to a 10x multiple from there. So, even if it ran up to 100, 200 on the secondary market, and that's where people were buying it at, hand over fist, before an IPO or a direct listing at, $500-$600, there's still a double there to be had. It's just not a 20x, but the XRP in that time frame for price appreciation, I think you could see 100, 200x very easily on XRP during this bull run. So it's up to you. Not a move I personally would make, and again, feel how you want about that, but just my thesis. Hey Prod, hey brother, it's good to see you again. He says, 2 questions. Is a massive BTC or digital asset confiscation by U.S. government upon us to deal with global debt? And are you mixed race? That's an interesting second question. And respectfully put, thank you. So the first one, I definitely don't see them confiscating Bitcoin. No central banks are going to hold Bitcoin. It's not a narrative that's going to play out. I can't say I guarantee that, but pretty much guarantee that. Other assets can't be frozen or clawed back, XRP in particular. So there's no way for them to confiscate them. You own the keys to your wallets, even in our infrastructure, unless you sign transactions, it's not going anywhere. And we're not going to sign it unless you tell us to. So, and if it's in a trust and your trustee is protecting it from creditors, including the U.S. government, you might even have it set up in a Cook Islands trust through us. And we could transfer the assets there. And then they definitely can't take it. So, no, I don't think it's not anything that I'm concerned about. And then to your second question, I have had a full panel done by 23andMe, and I am as white as you could possibly be. I'm German, Irish, and Swedish. Yeah, very, very white. I have some larger features, including lips and nose. Breathe pretty good. I am athletic, but yeah, I'm very, very Viking. Is really what it is. But I tan okay. So I thank you. You're not the first person that's asked me that, and I'm good with that. I'm okay with not looking like the Ken doll. So thank you. I take it as a compliment. Let's see here. David Baker says, just started the LLC today with Jonathan. What is next after it's set up? So once you have the LLC established, you can pay for custody. You'll be on the list. Again, Anchorage should be set up here within the next 7 business days, and we'll begin onboarding people there. If you are on the list and in line for that, you'll be able to attend the original webinar that we do with them for the platform. And we'll get your assets moved over there. We're going to work with them and our team as well to make sure that that's a very smooth process. It's very easy for you, and that would be the next step. And then once we're over there, we have partnerships to be able to begin earning yield on your assets that you hold there. Archax, again, I think is going to take a little bit longer, and the reason for that, and when I say longer for people that are not already at standard custody. I think it's going to be fairly swift for clients that we currently have. The reason it might take a little longer for other clients is, we were standard custody's first wealth management client. Now we're Archac's first wealth management client. And because of that, the functionality within their UI and some of the things that they have set up just aren't catered toward an RIA or wealth manager. You'd be surprised how specific that actually needs to be able to facilitate, full view of all the underlying clients' assets on one page and not have to just, go vault by vault. You need something else to be able to tie in do the reporting and billing. They don't currently have that. We have a provider that we're working with to be able to orchestrate that. And so, again, kind of what I alluded to earlier, there's just things that if you're early, if you're the first mover, if you're the pioneer, it takes some time to build and get things in place. So, again, appreciate you guys being patient with us on that stuff, but that would be the next step once you do have the LLC. And I would get a bank account set up so that you can take profit if you plan to do that. And I would have an exchange account set up. Actually, I have my Kraken Pro account set up right here next to me on my other monitor. So, be a good spot to recommend it. Jiminy Thickets, not Jiminy Crickets, but Jiminy Thickets. Is there a possibility to participate in a stablecoin AMM LP managed by a qualified custodian? Would this be advantageous, not only in terms of security, but also passive income possibility in the future? Yes. Is how I would answer that. Ripple and their RL USD or Real USD, I think will be the first. It will be the first stablecoin issued on the XRPL. We do have USDC and XRP and some other stuff, but yeah, especially with some of the amendments that are coming down the pike. You got digital identity, you've got oracles, you've got atomic swaps, you've got pseudo accounts, you've got a lot of different things that are going to allow exactly what you're discussing here. However, it is going to take a little bit of time. I would say 6 to 12 months really before that's at scale and really rocking and rolling. We're going to be first to market with that. That's definitely on our radar. It's something that we want to be proactively creating with the custodians. They don't even have the capability to issue a trust line inside institutional custody yet, because there hasn't been enough demand for that type of stuff. There hasn't been any utility directly on the XRPL as far as DeFi, but it's definitely something that we're actively having conversations about and looking to work with our partners to build so that we can participate in the AMMs and liquidity pools from qualified custody and be able to delegate out of those accounts where your assets stay insured and escrowed and visible in your wallet there in qualified custody. So that's the vision. That's what we're building. Our partners can see it. And thank you for bringing it up. Good questions. Let's see here. Goop on Twitter, run it up, but I can't see what you're asking. Carla Pitt says, "Hey Jake, in addition to the mastermind, which other services are available to non-US customers through DWP, DWS, and ASG?" Not sure what DWS and ASG are as acronyms. DWP's Digital Wealth Partners and Digital Ascension Group, which is DAG. Maybe that's what your Ascension Group. Oh, Ascension Group and DWS. I think that's what you're asking. Those two entities. Yeah, we can work with non-US customers. Not a problem. We have clients from Australia, the UK, Austria, Norway, Stockholm, Italy, France, Spain, Portugal, a lot there in the EU, in the UK, Canada. We have a gentleman from Japan in the mastermind. He doesn't work with us on the institutional custody side yet, but he could. We have a few people from Brazil, South America also. So yeah, happy to work with any international parties. You do have to go through KYC just like anybody else. You are going to have to hold your assets in an entity, which could be in Dubai or whatever other jurisdiction you wanted to hold that in and partner with. We just got to make sure that it's not sanctioned and it's good, which I don't expect that it would be. And especially with RCHACs, it's really great for international clients. So we want to be able to provide global coverage, and would love to work with you if that's something that you're interested in. Carl just is extremely knowledgeable on the insurance front. He says max fund and borrowing correctly makes it a great tool for this is for the insurance. Sometimes a MEC can make sense as well. But you want to be strategic about that, right? You want to know what you're going to do if it does become a MEC. And again, Carl's working with us in this. So if you're going to come to us on the insurance side, excited to have him as part of the team. Let's see here. Eric says, hey, Jake, I know you don't think gold will rise as high as some say, but how do you see them shoring up the new financial system regarding trust in the new banking system? I think that they'll have to back it with commodities. Absolutely. I don't think that you're going to I think there may be a small revaluation of gold, but I don't think it's going to be as drastic as most people anticipate. And it just preserves your wealth and purchasing power. It's not like, there are times when you get ROI on gold, especially in cyclical patterns, right? But if, again, like I mentioned before, if you look at the relative value to real estate and then also the S&P 500 and the Dow, it's kind of middle of the road. It's a pretty average price, right? So if we saw a huge downturn in the Dow, when you price gold in something other than dollars, that's when you get relative value and could have ROI. If you swapped from one thing to the next, right? So if you sold the S&P right now and bought gold and you expected this significant downturn in the S&P and then sold the gold and bought back after the significant downturn, maybe that's a good play. But I think that obviously the central banks hold significant amounts of gold. There was a post by Gold Telegram this evening that I posted on Twitter. I quoted it and put it out. And this freezing of Russian assets is becoming a big deal. Do you know what you can't freeze? You can freeze gold reserves, depending on where they're held. You could sanction them, and then they wouldn't be able to get access to them. You know what you can't freeze? XRP. Nobody has control over it. Nobody can issue more of it. The origin account's been black holed. Nobody can freeze it. Nobody can claw it back. You can blacklist wallets so that if you don't want to transact with them, you don't have to, but you can't make other people blacklist that wallet. You can recommend that they do, but until they do it, doesn't matter. So I think that there will be that digital asset in particular, I think will be used at scale and will end up a tier one asset in the banking system and will offset so much of this debt when it appreciates in value that people really just don't comprehend how that's going to work in order to be able to rebalance the system. And if you knew that was coming and you already had it on your books, you'd front run it, man. You would print so much money to get to the point where you knew it was going to even out. So, people are mad about the inflation. I'm not happy about it. I have to live with it just like everybody else does. But I can, if I was a banker, if I was an institution, if I was a government, and I knew this is where things were headed, I'd squeeze every last drop out of the other system before we let it fold and then short it up with this one. So that's what I believe. I believe that XRP in particular, out of all the digital assets, will be used. They won't even have to revalue it. They'll just start putting payment flows through it once it does have enough liquidity in it to continue to moving the price up to where they want it. And then that being on the balance sheets of governments, banks, institutions, enterprises. A lot of situations will, you have assets and liabilities. If your liabilities far out exceed your assets, then you have an asset that appreciates the same level of your liabilities. Now you're even. Anyway, I think BlackRock might be playing a part in that also. Carla Pitts asked another one. She said, regarding the buy, borrow, die method, during the borrow part, banks try to become controllers of digital assets used as collateral. How to avoid that? So we use tri-party agreements. So you still have control of your asset. They stay in your wallet. We escrow that, and it stays in your wallet. They have visibility of that. They are a signer on your account. But at the end of the day, when, there's a smart contract in place is what happens. Eventually, we don't even have this yet. So this is how far out we are. It's stuff that we're working on, but you'd have a smart contract where it's escrowed. It's a tri-party agreement. It stays in your wallet. They have a wallet at the same institution. If the terms of the agreement are breached or your side of the agreement is not kept, a portion of those assets then escrowed would move to their wallet. Depending on, if you're in complete default or whatever else, they would take a portion of it to pay themselves back, right? That's how that'll work in the future. You'll have a smart contract, a tri-party agreement. We would be a signer on the account. We're kind of a neutral third party. Obviously, we have your interest. We have the partnership's interest. And we have to remain a neutral third party. We could have another outside party be on the account, just as a supervisor or a non, they have no horse in the race type deal, no counterparty conflicts. So those are the current agreements that we draft up in those circumstances. We have institutional partners that will lend when you borrow, and we're all three on the account. We all sign an agreement, and the assets get locked up. Once the notes are paid, those assets become released. If the assets appreciate that are locked up, a portion of those assets get moved back out of escrow. We would hold 125%, up to 125% of what the original contribution was in the wallet. If anything exceeds that, it becomes unlocked and falls back into the wallet. If your original contribution drops down to 75% of what it originally was, they ask you to top it up and put some liquidity in there just to make sure that everything's, more than the LTV, way more than the LTV. It's over collateralized is what they call it. So right now, to your point, when you borrow currently, people do normally take control of those assets, and they're the owners, and they, that's how they reduce the risk or mitigate the risk of loss for them. In the future, though, there'll be an escrow function and a smart contract, and there won't be a way to manipulate that. If you default or you don't meet your criteria or uphold your end, they would take a portion of the assets via the smart contract. And that's fair, right? It wasn't like you got taken for or screwed or anything like that. That's what you agreed to. So that's what we're working on. Let's see here. And I'll just point this out before I go on to the next thing. We always recommend responsible LTV, right? So the loan to value ratio, you always want to be over collateralized, have way more than enough for what you're borrowing against. We recommend somewhere between 10 and 30% most of the time, so that you have 3x the collateral there for whatever you're taking. If you do have a substantial amount of assets, you can, lock up a third of those, the rest of them stay in the wallet, you're over collateralized that way, and you could use the rest of it to earn a yield. I'd like to get it to where it's kind of like a HELOC, where you use the assets, they're loaned out or delegated to a liquidity pool, producing income in some capacity, and then you can still borrow against those assets while they're being put to work. Got to be careful of conflicts of interest and some other things around that, but it's definitely something that we're working on. Ed says, I'm ready. I'm ready too, Ed. I hope tomorrow is a good Thursday. Ripple loves Thursdays, so we'll see if anything fun happens. Let's see here. David says, Jake, thank you. What are the specific digital assets you accept for a total of 100K to start working with you? Obviously, XRP, what are those? So Hedera, Hashgraph is one. Archax allows us to hold Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Matic, Solana, Avalanche, Chainlink, Algorand, Hedera Hashgraph, XLM, and then they're interoperable with Fireblocks. They use Fireblocks as part of their infrastructure. So if you had millions of dollars in something else, we would love to hold that for you also, and we can lobby for it and get it done. So, but yeah, just offhand, those are kind of the 10 main ones that we work with. I think we can hold quant at Anchorage. So for anybody that has a decent amount of quant, that's something we can work with also. Quantitative tightening, good name. They say, hey Jake, how are the revenues from delegating to A&Ms taxed? They'd be taxed as income unless the loophole that we're working on is they would go into a wallet that was multi-sig, and it wouldn't be in your complete control. It wouldn't be in your control or your Dominion. Dominion and control are what qualify you to have a taxable event with crypto. And so if it's held in qualified custody under our account and we're a signer, you don't have complete control or Dominion, and therefore it's not taxable. So you can borrow against it and never be taxed on it, and it can compound. That's the idea anyway. So that might change, as the regulations change and come out. Those are the current rules, though, and that completely complies, and we have letters from CPA saying so. So, yeah, as long as the distributions or the LP tokens or whatever you have is held in institutional custody inside of a multi-sig wallet, the appreciation there wouldn't be taxable to you. And again, hopefully we can work with other people, and that can be used as collateral, and you can borrow against it as it continues to accrue value over time. Jared says, hi, Jake. Well, and here, I'll go back again. I think a lot of regulation is going to come in around this. So I think to even participate in AMMs, you're going to have to partner with a broker-dealer, especially if you're allocating over $50 million. You yourself are going to have to be a broker-dealer, or you're going to have to partner with a broker-dealer to be able to earn the fees on that. That's something that we're well aware of and working on to make sure that we're able to provide that for our clients. And the other thing, I think AMMs and liquidity pools may end up being securities offerings. And so you would want to set up an SPV for that, and you would have to obviously, read through the subscription agreement, the PPM or private placement memorandum, which would disclose all the risks associated with these things, and you'd have to sign that you're aware of those in order to participate. And then you would own an equity stake in the pool that's tokens. I think that's actually how this stuff's going to work. And so, again, things that we're building on the side over here actually work really well with where we see the space going. And we're trying to be proactive in making sure that we have established routes and creative solutions to provide our clients. So it is getting close to the top of the hour here. So I'm sorry if I skip any of your questions. Jiminy Thickets has a good one here that I just ran into. So I'll run this down before I get to the end. Is there a possibility? Oh, I already did this one. All the way down to the bottom here, and we'll scroll up a little bit. Brenda Helton. Hey, ma'am, how are you? Good to see you. She says, Hashdex NASDAQ Crypto Index US ETF has filed an S1 today. with the SEC that includes XRP. How do you anticipate these ETFs affecting the price of XRP? It's an indexed US ETF, so they're going to have to buy some XRP. Oh, excuse me. To cover that position. But it's a diversified fund, so I don't think that it's going to have a huge impact. I think it'll be about as much impact as we've seen from the ETPs in Europe. I don't think that it's going to be overwhelming. The ETF that's going to move XRP, if it does happen, is BlackRock iShares. If they use the infrastructure that was set up last year in November and immediately file an S1 and get it through, and they're first to market with that before anybody else, and they pile in on it, I think that's how they move XRP's price, personally. If you need to move it fast to save some things, that's the way I would do it. Oh, this is cool. Shawnee Montana was gifted a membership by Chadwick. Very cool. Thank you for the gift. And then John Graves was also gifted a membership by Chadwick. Thank you, brother. He's gifting everybody memberships. You get very awesome. Thank you. Let's see here. This one's good. Peaky Blinder says, really been trying to understand the AMMs, trialing LPs and a few small pools, but really having a difficulty wrapping my mind around the strategy and the implementation. Need to find a comprehensive course. I don't think one exists right now, Peaky. Just to be transparent, we haven't even played in them because I haven't seen any successful at making money off of them. We had a few people that did participate on the Orchestra sidechain when it was in beta before they launched it. That did have some appreciation as Bitcoin was running up because they participated in a pool that had Bitcoin versus XRP. I know one gentleman that is doing well with that. He runs Cryptoland. He's here in Dallas with me. Close. He's a good guy. A lot of the community's kind of shunned him, which I think is crappy. He has a very cult following in Southeast Asia that plays his game, Cryptoland, and he has the largest AMM on the XRPO right now. Over $1 million worth of liquidity in just that one liquidity pool. A lot of NFTs within that game and ecosystem. It's really cool, honestly. Not something that I play actively, but to see him and the success he's had with it, it's pretty cool. So, way off topic. We'll get back to the AMMs here. Once we have digital identity on the XRPL and we see some institutional adoption and we're trading securities versus stable coins, which is, I think, going to be the main type of AMM that exists in the short term here. Eventually, they'll have security versus security, and then you'll have two, variables within there, and maybe even, AMMs to be able to provide liquidity between trades on cryptocurrencies. I could see that taking place in the short term also, especially if there was a sanction and a freeze on Tether. But yeah, to be able to earn interest with the representation in LP tokens, I think once this becomes institutionalized, you're going to have three main mechanisms that you'll earn yield in the AMM through. One of which would just be an underlying return that you'll get, kind of like a CD. So like you put your money in a CD at the bank, they pay you a certain rate. I think it'll be very low for the AMMs. I think it'll be like 1 or 2%, something nominal. It won't be very meaningful just for participating. And you'll have to lock them up in there for a certain period of time. I don't think you'll just be able to hop in and out, the way that I want this to work. And again, that's with the pseudo account. So your XRP actually stays in the pseudo account and you delegate that liquidity to the pool that's represented in LP tokens instead of having to actually put your XRP in the pool. Because almost everybody that I know that's put their XRP in the pool has lost it. They would have been better just sitting in an XRP. But again, once I think it's become institutionalized, you'll get like a base yield just for providing it, locking it up for whatever term you're going to lock it up. because you don't want people dumping LP tokens onto the market. I mean, I guess it wouldn't matter, but it would lower the value of the pool. So secondarily, again, you're going to have people arbitraging that market and willing to bid. You know, David Schwartz believes somewhere between 90 and 98% of what they think they can make over the 24-hour period. And then whatever they bid in LP tokens gets burnt. So the remainder of the LP tokens in the pool appreciate in value in correspondence to that. And then lastly, which is I think actually the most lucrative way that people are going to make money with the AMMs, is participating in AMMs where both of the assets that are being traded appreciate substantially in value. So you don't have to give up your XRP. Stays over here in your pseudo account, or you're in institutional custody. You use a pseudo account to be able to delegate that interest or liquidity into the pool that's represented in LP tokens. And you would put it in a pool in assets that you thought were both going to appreciate substantially over whatever term you were locking it up for. And hopefully they both have some volatility against one another too. So, you know, something like two other tokens that you thought would have utility over a 3-year period. So like, let's say there's a pool between HBAR and Casper, right? And you think both of those are going to have significant appreciation over the next year, because you're seeing the partnerships that are coming out, and maybe you can see, you know, the ecosystems that are being built out, and the use cases that are coming along, and the volumes that are going to come to those transactions inside the smart contracts on those networks, or the dApps that are being created. And you know that's going to drive the valuation of the token up. And so again, those are going to be trading in that pool against one another. Both of them appreciate. I think there's situations, you know, if the assets in the pool appreciated substantially, you could make hundreds of % on your providing liquidity to certain pools. That's not here yet, though. These AMMs have been launched in a down market for the most part, and so the assets in the pool are, maybe some have appreciated, but not as much as XRP in particular, especially like over the last couple of weeks here. So you would have been better off just holding it in XRP. So rambling on there, but hopefully that gives you a little bit of perspective on that, and that's definitely something that we are watching, proactively working with, and making sure that we're going to be first to market when that does hit institutions and the capability to participate. Oh, wow. Kurt, thank you, brother, for the super chat. He says, we are watching XRP become the modern day version of the Bankor coin. I would agree. That was proposed in the 1940s by John Maynard Keynes at Bretton Woods, 1944. He says XRP is looking to become the new global Forex bridge currency. I would agree. Thanks, Jake, for all the value that you give. Much appreciated. Appreciate you, brother. I like the DMs and our conversations also. Not a whole lot of people get it, and it's nice to have, like, to hop on this and have a conversation with you guys and have 150 people on here on YouTube watching. I never would have thought, you know, and that's what's also cool about the mastermind. A lot of the community there is we all have aligned interests. We have a unified understanding of what we all believe is going to happen, so we don't feel alienated or ostracized like you might feel in your normal life, just around the people that you're dealing with on a regular basis. So anyway, thank you, Kurt. Hope you have a wonderful evening, brother. Brenda, thank you. You didn't have to do that for the super chat. She says, thanks for all that you do for us. Really cool to be a part of the Beyond Broke Mastermind. And your lives are brilliant. Thank you for the kind words. That means a lot. Yeah, like I said, never would have thought, you know, this many people would hop on here and want to have a conversation. But it is, it's very cool, like she said. I'll wrap this up for Pinky. I know Pinky's got to go to bed, and so do I. He says, being so early and not being naturally tech-minded, I'm experimenting with small value to try and see in the action what's taking place. Thanks for the insight, brother. That was good stuff. Absolutely, man. Yeah, we're all, you know, kind of experiencing this stuff together. I am not all overly technical. I read things and have a base set of knowledge and then talk to a bunch of people and then try to create correlations in ways that I can understand things by relating it to something else. And then I just pass that on to other people that hopefully have a similar background or context that they, or lens, I guess is the right word, to be able to see things through. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I hope you have a wonderful evening. If you do want to reach out, just go check us out at digitalfamilyoffice.io if you'd like to book a time with myself or our advisors. And then digitalwealthpartners.net would be the other one for the wealth management side of things. And if you're interested in private deals or more of this stuff, where we get a little bit more into the nitty gritty, share some extra things that don't share here in the mastermind group, we would love to have you. That is mastermind.beyondbroke.com. So with that, go ahead and wrap it up. I hope you have a wonderful evening, a wonderful week, and we'll see you guys on the next one.